This concert happens, of course, around Veterans Day. So it is the concept and the idea around the concert is tied closely to Veterans Day. And the program, many of the pieces on the program are works that are really close to my heart and who I am. One of them is Shostakovich's Seventh Symphony. We're doing a movement from the Seventh Symphony, which was written during the blockade, the St. Petersburg blockade, where for years Nazis cut off access to everything for St. Petersburg. My family all lived through the blockade. And when I was a child, my grandparents would tell me stories about that experience and what that was like. So it's something that's very close to me. And I heard stories actually, even as a kid, about this symphony being written and musicians dying of starvation as they were rehearsing for it. And yet, we persevered, which is a very Russian, also, I think, story. So much of Russian history and culture comes out of these kinds of stories. Also, my grandfather fought in World War II. He went in as a volunteer. He could have avoided being drafted because he was a doctoral student at the university. He was a scientist, but he ended up fighting the Nazis. And as is common in Russia, lost tens of millions of soldiers during World War II. Twice his entire unit was wiped out, and he was the only one standing for one reason or another. And once because he was injured, once just out of a fluke. And he ended up being one of the soldiers who liberated Berlin. So he was in Berlin at the end of the war. And so again, this is a really big part of my family history and something that I grew up hearing about both from the people who were part of it and from the rest of my family. And so I think it's very important for us, especially now, to remember we've gotten to this point where people are starting to forget what happened. So many of the people who were alive during that time are no longer with us. I think younger generations aren't learning about what happened during World War II. And I think it's very dangerous to forget history and to forget the specifics of that history also. Because when we learn history in schools, the way it's taught, usually it's just a few facts thrown out or a few kind of big picture ideas. We don't dig deeply into what the history means and the impact that it has for today, especially the farther off the history is, the less we connect to it. And to me, connecting to history is the most important thing. And this is a thing about this concert. It's all about connecting to the history. There's a piece by William Grant Still about the Black soldiers, American soldiers who fought during World War II. There's a work by Pavel Haas, a composer who was persecuted by the Nazis and whose work could have died as a result, but we luckily still have some of his pieces. This particular piece is quite ironic. It's a movement from his Second Symphony, and it captures, I think, the rise of Nazism in Germany and musical form. Copland's Fanfare for the Common Man. There's also, we have Strauss's Four Last Songs, which is more of a reflection on what happens after a war and reflection on the end of life. And also there's we have some John Williams, the hymn to the fallen from Saving Private Ryan, which is a more contemporary, I would say, or a more recent look at what World War II meant and what war means in general.